Alrighty, hello everybody. Today we're going to be creating this car right here. Um, so let's get started. The blueprints and everything will be in the description, and all the reference images you could just find on Google by browsing around. Alright, so let's get started. So I'm going to start off by erasing our car here. Let's get rid of all of that. Alrighty. Oh, got rid of our image there. So we're going to start off with a cube. We're going to put it right about here up where the intake is, and we're going to go from the intake and work down to the intakes, and then we'll extrude the nose off of that. So we're going to add a subdivision modifier over here on the right, and then we're going to make sure this is centered. Okay, so we're going to do Control R. We're going to move our mouse so that way it's lining up vertically here. If we press 7. And then we're going to go into our vertice mode and press C and highlight everything on the left side and delete it by pressing X and then vertices. And then we're going to come over to the right and we're going to add a mirror modifier. Okay. And once we've added that, we can begin. So we're going to start off by taking, let's see, start off by putting our bottom of the cube up here where the intake starts to branch out. And let's see if we can find a picture of this. Okay, so we can see that it's fairly, I guess, an aggressive angle up here at the top, and then it'll come down. So we're gonna start with this, and then we'll extrude everything else off it. So let's drag this forward here. And then let's begin. Once we got this sort of worked out, just a basic shape. Bring this up to this line, actually. Okay. So now we're going to select these two vertices, and we're going to extrude them. And we're going to go straight down to the bottom. Right here. This line right here, because then you got the skirt under the car. So we're going to go into our face mode and just delete this face that came up here in the middle. Okay. So now that we have this going for us, what we're going to do is we're going to add a control point here. Press, let's see, we'll highlight it first, and we'll press 7. So we're going into the overhead view. We're going to bring this out to where we want our intakes to be. So for this car, our intakes are going to be right about here. Yep, okay. And because this is so wildly confusing, you just kind of have to guess a little bit, but that's okay. So now that we have that going for us, we'll select everything where the intake is and lower, and we'll extrude that forward to right about here. Okay, we'll bring it forward to where the intake is, which, right here. Okay. And then again, because we extruded with the mirror modifier, we have to delete the faces that appeared. Okay. Then we'll take this back end, we'll extrude it back to right about here. Just grab this, scale it down by pressing S and Z to just do it on that axis, and scale. Nope, I'll actually leave that the way it is for now. we'll have to delete those faces as well. And then we'll press 7 and bring this to kind of match the shape of the car a little bit. So let's that out a little bit, but then we can grab this, scale it in. Looks a little bit better. And then this can come out a little bit. Alright, so if we press 1, we can add a control loop a little bit down by the bottom here. And then we'll just deselect everything in the middle by pressing C and middle mouse button. And that'll delete anything in the circle. So we'll do that, grab our red arrow, and if you don't have that on your screen, up at the left here, this little button here is what allows you to do that. Alrighty, so we'll bring this in a little bit. Bring that up. Okay. What we're going to do is take this, and we're going to drag this in a little bit. Then we'll add another one out here by the edge. Select these, and we'll actually drag these up just a little. And we'll drag the whole thing down. So all I'm doing here is eyeball stuff. So there you go. It's decent. I'm going to smooth this out by going up to the top left, clicking Object, and Smooth. And then I'm adding the subdivision to 2, render to 3. And then I'm going to take this, drag that down. Okay. And then what we're going to do from here is actually what I can do is I can delete all those faces by highlighting them, pressing X, and then we're going to go into our edge mode here. We're going to select these two in the center, press F, and that will combine them together. We'll do the same with these two. Actually, we won't do that with these two. What we'll do is we'll press Control R, use our scroll wheel to make sure there are 2 lines that appear there. And we'll connect it this way. And the reason we did that is so I can add a control loop here and make the nose the way I want it to be. So we'll put that line right about here. I'm going to select all these vertices right here only on the front. Press S, X, and then press 0 on the numpad. There we go, now it's straight. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight these faces, and I'm going to extrude them to right about here. And I'm going to scale it along the Z-axis, so they are just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to delete the faces in between that result from that. So that's looking pretty good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this all the way to the front. And I'm just going to scale that down. Okay, so because this is separated, I'll show you what to do if this happens. We'll highlight the vertices in the center. And up at the top right, we will set the location along the x-axis to 0. And then I'll highlight these faces by pressing C again, deleting those faces, and there we go. So now I'm going to press 7. And I'm going to take these on the end here, and I'm going to drag them together just like that. Alright, so now I'm going to add control loop right here, Control R, and then scale it along the z-axis to put that where I want it, which is, let's see, just like that. And then this actually needs to be a little bit taller, so let's bring that up a little bit. And this blueprint's a little bit confusing. Very accurate, but a little bit confusing simply because it's you got a lot of lines everywhere and you don't really know what to follow. So I looked up a lot of reference images from a lot of different cars, and I'm just making a car that I think looks cool. So, and at the same time trying to follow this blueprint to the best of my abilities. So what we're going to do is add a control loop here and drag that down. And we're going to add one right here, drag that forward. There we go. Now we have our basic car shape. I'm actually going to add a control loop here and bring that forward as well. And then I'm going to take this and actually drag it out a little bit. Get a little bit wider. Okay, I like how that looks. So we'll stick with that. I'm gonna have to take this vertex and drag it up a little bit. Okay, that works. So we'll press 7. Looks like everything is mostly where it should be. Nose is just a tad wide. So we'll select each individual loop and drag it in. Then bring this to right about there so we have the right amount of curvature. Now I'm going to scale this along the x-axis and actually make the intake itself a little bit wider as well. Okay. So now that we have that, we need to add a control loop right here, highlight everything on the front here, and extrude that out just a little bit. Then add a control loop to bring that further towards the front. Delete the faces in between, right here and right here. There we go. And then we'll hollow that out in the intakes at a later time when we remove the mirror modifier here. So from here, we'll start with the bottom plane, which is the flat part on the bottom. I'm actually going to hide this plane here by just pressing H. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll highlight everything in the middle here where I actually want this to be. So right to about there, actually. That's just about perfect. But I'm also going to highlight right here, because typically some of the nose actually comes down to it as well. So we'll extrude that along the z-axis, and then to flatten it out, we'll press S and then Z, and then we'll press 0 on our numpad before we press enter. Then we'll press enter, and now we have a flat extruded surface from that shape. Very useful. I'll bring this back a little bit to straighten it out. Okay, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to drag this up actually and extrude it again to whatever thickness I want the floor to be, and I want it to be right about there. I'm going to hide the mirror modifier so I can get access to all these faces we created. And delete them. Reactivate that. And then we're going to select everything along the side here. once we have all those faces selected, we're gonna extrude them. Just gonna extrude them straight out. Yep. Right to, if we press 7 out to this outer line here, and then we'll add a control loop and drag it in towards the center here to minimize the curvature of these two meshes coming together. And then we'll add one along the edge to sharpen that up as well. So the nice thing is this thing is very, very square, so it makes our life easy. Until you get to the front, of course, we got to make this shape right here. So we'll start by going into vertex mode, which is typically what I like to work with. I'm going to add an edge loop right here. And that doesn't affect the mesh all that much. I'll get rid of this control loop by pressing Alt, left click, and then we're going to press X and delete vertices. Oh, nope, sorry. We're going to press delete edge loops. That's how you delete edge loops if you accidentally add them. And that got rid of that little crease we saw in the nose. Work with this a little bit more. This actually should be straight, so I'll add an edge loop right there. And I'll grab these three, drag them out just a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, got a little sidetracked. So we'll select everything in the front here, and we'll extrude that just a little to like right about here, because what we're doing is we're just measuring this curve that we got here, and then we'll extrude it again out to where the front of it should be, which is right there. We'll grab the front vertices right here, these, not the center because we don't want to move that, and we're going to scale it along the x-axis to compress this together and drag them to where they should be. I'm trying to make this line right here as straight as possible, just so the mesh looks clean. Okay, we're going to drag that in, and we'll drag that in right there. And then we'll also take these, bring those in. Okay, and then we'll delete this face right here, and that one. Okay, so we have this seam here. This happens a lot when working with the mirror modifiers. So all we have to do is select the vertices in the middle and move them to 0 because they got moved along the x-axis a little bit, and your crease is gone. So the other thing you could do is if you want to allow for a little bit of space, you can select the distance in which it'll merge meshes like that are together along the axis, which is right here on the right. So another little tool that you can use. Okay, so something I'm going to do is actually going to take this and drag it out. Take this and drag that in to kind of square this off a little bit. Okay, something happened there, so I'm going to go back. That's where. So I'll select these two. And select everything on the top here. Drag that out a little bit, but right now I'm just trying to create the envisioned look that I had for this, so I think I captured it okay here. So now, what we can start working with is, actually, right before I do that, one more control loop just to bring that up. And out. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now what we can start with is we'll just start with the tires. We'll do those next. Or actually scratch that. We'll start with the front wing. So we'll add in a cube. Press 7. We'll center this right here, and we'll just extrude it to the back of it and the front. So just like that. Actually, we'll bring it all the way back here. Okay. And then I'm going to add the subdivision and the mirror modifier. Then we'll add our control loop down the center. Delete everything on the left side. And there we go. Now we have a mirrored cube. So we're going to scale this down just like this. And then of course the wing has an airfoil type shape to it. So we're going to add some control loops, scale the ends down a little bit. Let's see, bring this up a little bit. Alright, I'm okay with that. So, select everything here, and we'll extrude it all the way to the end, which is right here. Oh, looks like I actually got it confused. It should be this one right there. There we go. Now we're working with the right piece. These lines can get really confusing, so just to clear it up, I'm going to select this and the picture for the back and click backslash, and that'll just isolate those two. Make this a little bit easier to see. So we're going to add no, we'll just start with one. Right here, where there's a major turn in this piece, and we'll just add those wherever there's a major wave or turn or whatever you want to call it. And then we will add some more to kind of sharpen those a little bit, if you will. I'm going to add one at the end here, which will be the thickness of the wall that goes on the side. Alright, that looks like the proper shape, so I'll click backslash again to bring that back. We'll press 7, and what we're going to do is we're going to drag it down to the correct location vertically. So if you got a situation like this where you need to shrink these, we'll highlight all the ones you want to compress, and we'll press S and Y. And then we'll just scale this down a little bit. You want to make sure you're only scaling on the Y-axis. That is important. Okay. And we'll add a couple control loops to get the shape correct. Okay, that is decent for my opinion, so we'll start working on the edge here. So we'll select everything on top, all these faces right here that we have, press 3. What we'll do is we'll extrude these up to just about where the top of this is. And we'll press S and Z, and then we'll press 0, so we have a flat surface to work with. And then it comes down on the bottom a little bit, so we'll highlight everything on the bottom as well. We'll extrude that. let's see, extrude, and to right about here, and we'll center that as well. And you'll see why I didn't go to the bottom there all the way. We'll select everything on the back now, and we'll extrude that to right here. Okay, so the reason I didn't go all the way down is because we got this part right here. So that is actually what we're seeing. So we need to select everything on the bottom here. Select it all. Press Z, and we're going to rotate by just pressing R to get the correct angle that we're looking for. So in my opinion, that's good. So I'm gonna add another control loop. I'm gonna drag it all the way down, and then I'm gonna drag, actually no, I'm not. I'm gonna drag it just above it. Sorry. So this will be the thickness of that little curvy thingy or what have you. Select everything on the sides here. And then we'll extrude it out and then down. Okay. A little bit further. Cool. So now we have that going for us. Now it's time to do the top. So we'll go into a vertice mode. We'll use the loop cuts we already have. And then we'll add one here in the middle. Actually two. To get that correct shape. That's the shape we're looking for. So what we can do is add a control loop and drag it up to sharpen the top here. We'll add one in the back, sharpen that up a little bit. And then we'll smooth this entire object. There we are. We have a decent wing. So now, on this car, we can see it connects to the nose vertically. So we'll deal with that by adding two control loops. We'll put one right here at the front of the wing. And then we'll put one right here near the back of the wing because the whole wing isn't connected. Now we're going to combine these two parts. So we're going to do Control J. That'll merge the two parts, so now they're one. And we're going to select all these faces that we want to connect up top to all the faces we want to do at the bottom. So I actually need to add a control loop right here as well to connect up there. Right there as well. Okay, so we have four faces on the bottom, three faces on the top. So we need to add a control loop somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it right smack in the middle, right there. And because this right here is no longer a loop to this, we're going to have to add another loop up top as well. And then we'll start selecting the edges like we did over there. And pressing F. And if this gets a little messy, you can always turn off or hide these modifiers by pressing the monitor right here. So, for example, that makes it a lot cleaner and easier to work with. Okay, now that you have this, we need to make this a little bit straighter. So, we're going to add a control loop right in the center. We're going to add one up top, drag it towards the car, and we're going to add one at the bottom, drag it towards the front wing. And then I'm going to add one right here as well. There we go. I'm fairly happy with that. think it looks okay. So now we have the rear wing to deal with. So we're going to add a cube. I'm going to press 7, put it over where the edge of this is, and we're going to scale it in. Actually, scratch that. We're actually going to center this. Do this a little bit of a different, more effective way. So we're going to add our subdivision, and we're going to mirror it. So we're going to add a control loop down the center. Press 7. Grab our vertices here, select the 2 on the left, technically 4 if you're thinking about it, but we're going to add the mirror modifier as well. So drag this to the length of the, I'm just going to call it the scoop part of the rear wing. I don't know what the technical term is, but it should be from right about here to somewhere up here. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so the rear end goes almost all the way to the top, and this is about halfway down. So right about here to up here. It's a very dramatic swing. So what we're going to do is add a control loop here, drag it down, and just kind of make this curve that it should have. And we'll press 7, select all the vertices on the right side, and just drag it out. Drag these back a little bit to where they should be. Okay. Reasonably happy with that, so we're going to press 7. Go into our edit mode, select everything on the side here, and we're just going to extrude it out to the width of the side of the wing here. And then we're going to select everything on top, very similar to the other wing we did. Select everything there. We're going to extrude it. And we're going to scale it along the z-axis. Just drag it up to the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all these vertices on the front and scale it along the y-axis, so I have a perfectly straight line there. Makes life a lot easier. So then, make sure I don't have the center there selected. I select everything on the front here, and extrude it all the way to the front of the wing right here. Then we'll highlight everything on the bottom that's not in the center there, because this is the wing portion, so we don't want to extrude that. Highlight everything all the way back, just like that, and we'll extrude it straight down, scale it along the z-axis. We're going to put that right at the bottom of the wing, which should be right around here. Drag these forward, kind of straighten that out a little bit. Okay. So now we're going to add a control loop. I'm going to put it right here, and we're going to make it for this curve here. So now we have that curve. We're going to add a control loop to, actually, before we do any of that, we're going to grab all these vertices here, and we're going to scale it along to the y-axis to compress it a little bit, and then we're going to drag them back so we can make this this bend here. And then we'll put a line right here, scale it along the z-axis, and then we'll scale these two in the front along the y-axis, right back here. Put a loop there. Drag that back. And then a control loop for the front here to kind of flatten that out. I'm gonna add one for this angle to sharpen that. And we're gonna sharpen the top. And of course sharpen the bottom. Okay, now that we have this shape here, we don't want this to merge with the wing section all that much. So we'll just add a control loop on that and drag it fairly close, but not all the way to the edge there. So if we smooth this object out, we can see it looks all like one piece, and it is. So it looks very clean. So now we're going to go back to our car. So obviously the car needs to go all the way to the back here. So we're going to select the top, scale that down just a little bit, and then take this whole section and extrude it back to right about that line right there. And we're going to scale it along the Y or the Z axis. And then we'll get rid of the faces in the center. And the back's always going to look like an absolute mess just because we have all the loop cuts coming back to meet back here. So you also need to be very careful not to have anything overlapping, because that could be bad. This should actually be under the wing. My bad. Or yeah, right there. And then I'm gonna grab this, bring it in. Alright, that's looking pretty good. So now we're gonna add one control loop, make it about yay thick right there. We'll highlight these three faces, or make it 4, just like that. We'll extrude it once, just a little bit like that, and then we'll extrude it again. And then extrude it one more time once it's inside the car. And there you go. Now it's connected to the car. So here's our rear wing. And something before I forget, we need to add a control loop here to sharpen the back of this flat surface on the bottom. We'll select the edge here, just these back two. It should be about that long. We'll extrude it up to here. And then we'll take the front, drag it down, take this, drag it down just a little bit less. Then we'll add a control loop to sharpen that a little bit. And add one right here. Then I'm going to add one here. I'm going to curve this forward, and this can come forward a little bit as well. Alright, that looks good. Control loop there. So this is looking pretty good. Now we got to deal with the suspension and the wheels. And then the basic car is complete, and then we'll also cut out the cockpit and the intake here on the front. And of course these two intakes here. These should actually be lower, but do I want to mess with that? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to drag these down actually. We'll drag the top portion down as well. And sometimes removing the subdivision makes this a little bit easier to look at the mesh. So if we turn that back on, all right, there we go. I'm okay with that. So rims and wheels. We'll create a cylinder here. Let me turn the light on. There we go. Okay. We'll go into our forward view here. We're going to rotate that 90 degrees. And then because the front ones have camber to them and the rear ones don't really have any camber, I'm going to use the rear one as the reference since on this car they're pretty much the same width. So very slight difference. So if we press 3, actually I won't worry about that. Okay, that's decent. We'll add a control loop down the center. We're going to add the mirror and subdivision modifiers. We'll delete everything on the left. And then because we rotated this, we need to mirror it along the z-axis for that to work as intended. So we'll select everything on this on the right side. We'll scale it out, bring this in to get this curvature that we're looking for. And then we'll drag it out just straight. And we'll drag it in dramatically. And then drag it out again and start this. The reason is these have a little bit of a lip there, so we'll add a control loop here to sharpen it, control loop here to sharpen it a little bit as well. Okay. Now that we have that portion, we can drag this up to the one on the top here. And then we'll scale this into that line, and then we'll press I and scale that into where the rim is there. We'll drag this in, actually. And that needs to come in a significant amount. And we press I again, just a little bit. And then what we can do from there is delete the face. Now to select this loop, we'll go into our line mode up in the left, and then we'll select Alt and click on that line, and it should select the entirety of that loop. And then we'll press E, X, just drag it in a little, it doesn't really matter. And then what we're going to do is go to our local location up at the right. Nope, I take that back. We are not going to do that. So we're going to center the wheel on the global axis. And then we're going to take our global location and make that loop 0. Alright, and there's our tire. I'm going to add a couple of loops here to kind of sharpen and sharpen the certain key things that I want to. So and then if we smooth this out, we can really see what it looks like. Okay, I think this needs to come in just a little. Alright, I'm okay with that. So put this where the tire should be. We're not going to add the camber yet. That'll come later. So now we're going to do Shift S, and then we're going to do cursor to selected and make sure you have your tire selected. And that'll bring your cursor to the origin of this tire, which should be right smack in the middle unless you did something. So now we're going to add a cylinder that is now perfectly lined up with our wheel. So we'll rotate that to orientate the wheel correctly. And we'll scale that in just so it's big enough to fit in the hole right here. And then we're also going to use the same modifiers, Subdivision, Mirror. And we'll add a control loop in the center. And we'll delete all that. Okay, so we're going to start with pressing I to come into this first circle here. And just to show you guys, if I go it comes in and then it comes up and then in again. So we're going to replicate that. So now that we have that, we're going to scale in. I'm going to get rid of the subdivision so you can see those clearer. We're going to bring it in to right about there. And we're going to extrude again, but this time we're going to scale in to make that lip. And then we're going to delete that face. And we'll do the same thing we did with the tire. We'll select this loop, extrude it along the x-axis. And make that 0. Alright, now we can bring this back so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to select this loop right here, drag it into where it actually should be. Then I'll extrude it out and scale it out a little bit. And then press I to flatten that. And we'll add a couple control loops to sharpen these edges here. Smooth it, and that looks fantastic. It's almost exactly what we're looking at. So now, that's the wrong application. Now we gotta deal with this. So, here's how we're gonna do it. We're going to find a direct image. This may not be the same tire, but theoretically it's the same amount of spokes. We'll call them spokes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have a total of 10. So let's get a calculator here. Just so we can remember what number we counted. So we're going to add ourselves, or actually come back to our tire here. So if you imagine a mesh here, we're going to extrude 10 faces, but we need a certain amount in between here. So let's say we want the, I guess you could call it the ratio. We want it 2 to 1, 3 to 1. I'm going to make it, let's say, 2 to 1 sounds fine to me. So that means we need 2 faces in between each one of these. So now we need to count that. So we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So if we add 20 to 10, we get 30. So we're going to create a cylinder with 30 vertices, or 30 faces. Rotate that 90 degrees. Scale it in to what the center of this should be. That looks good to me. Okay, so we're going to select our faces. I'm going to select that, skip 2, 1, skip 2, 1, skip 2, 1, skip 2, 1. And if you did your math correctly, you should end up with a perfect match. So you come around, and it's an infinite loop of 1, skip 2. Okay, so from here, what we're going to do is we're going to extrude it we're just going to press E and click. We're not going to drag anywhere, and then we'll press S, and we'll scale it out. Or actually, before we do that, forgot to do this part. We'll select the two faces here and press I to inset them. And then I'm also, yeah, okay, that's good. So now we'll select our faces all over again. Feel free to skip forward if you don't want to watch me do this. It's kind of painful, but alright, now that we have those selected, we'll extrude them, scale it out a little bit. See, I'm not sure why. Let's just make sure it extrudes. I don't know why my blender is being weird, but we'll scale it along the x-axis. Scale it in a little bit. I guess it did. Hang on. Let me undo this. Okay. Try this one more time. Scale it out a little bit. Press E. Scale that out. Scale it along the x-axis. Okay. Now we're going to add subdivision. My favorite modifier. And then from here, well, what we can do is add a control loop to each one of these spokes, if you want to call them that. Then we'll add some down the center there. Add some more on the edges. And then let's see what happens when we smooth it. Okay, for what I'm doing, I don't mind that. I think that's fine. So from here, we can select these faces. We'll press I and set them one more time. That's decent. Or actually, I'm going to inset them a little bit more. Right about there, and delete them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select one of our edge loops. We'll extrude it along the x-axis and make Z 0. Then we're going to press 7, highlight everything on the left side. Just like that. And I press B to bring that up, and then it's just a click and drag. Then we're going to mirror this along the z-axis. Then it looks like I got to extrude this again. There we go. Now we have some spokes. Need to drag it out here and make it a bit wider. So to continue this off, we're now going to work on the wheel hub as well as all the steering arms and things that go along with that. So we need a picture of the assembly. So let's go here, type in, let's see, 2017, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of these are airfoil shaped, and then I already know what the wheel hub looks like. We'll get a picture of that. F1 hub. Okay, This is the basic shape of the wheel hub here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to make that. So we'll press 1. We'll start with the front view here at a cylinder. Rotate it 90 degrees. We're going to scale it in a little bit. We don't want it to get to the perfect scale yet because we haven't made the shape yet. I'm going to add subsurface, or yeah, subdivision. I'll add that. And then I'm going to extrude this out right to about there and scale it in. And I'll isolate this to make it easier to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to add a control loop. Add a control loop here. Excuse me. And we're going to take the back here. We're going to extrude it out just a little bit twice to kind of sharpen that. And then I'm going to press I. I'm going to do that once. And then I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to take this arrow. I'll drag this in a little bit. And then I'm going to press I. And then I'll extrude that in a little bit. And I'm going to press I again. There we go. Now I'm going to manipulate what we got here. So I'm going to hold Shift, Alt, and I'm going to select all those loops. I'm actually going to scale it up a little bit. Back here, I'm going to grab this face along with the face on the outside, and I'm just going to drag that in to where I want it. Add a control loop here to sharpen that a little bit. I might have taken that just a tad too far. There we are. And then the end here needs to get a little bit shorter if we look at it here. Actually, I'm going to delete this front portion. Did not do that correctly. My memory was a little bit off on that. So we'll delete the vertices. We'll take this and we'll select all these and hit F to create that face again. And then we're going to extrude this out just a little bit. Scale it in. Press I. Scale in a little bit. Do that one more time. And I'm just going to extrude it back. Right to back here. And then press I again. Do that 2 more times. There's our shape. But I want this to be a little sharper, so I'm going to add a control loop. Drag it up here. I'm going to add one right here. I'll add one right here. Alright, that works for me. So then on this end, I'm going to take this, scale it in just a little bit to probably right about here, and I'll extrude it out. Extrude it, scale it in a little bit, and then extrude. And I'm going to unisolate this so you can see what's going on here. And then I'll extrude this a few more times, so that way it looks proper from the outside. I'm going to sharpen this a little bit. And this right here at the end needs to come up, so I'll just select all those. Drag it up a little bit. There we go. So now we just got to select it. There it is. And we got to scale it down to the right size. So probably about like that. That's what I would say. And then I'm going to select the front here, and I'm going to make it shorter. And scale it down a little bit. And it should be on the inside of the spoke, so right about here. Let's grab this, drag it so it goes into the car just like that. It's not looking too bad. I'm going to select the face on this side over here. We'll just press I one more time, and then I'm going to scale this to just about there, so it's very small fit difference there. I'm going to add a control loop. Drag it back here. I'm going to isolate it real quick so you guys can see what's going on. So we took a control loop, put it right back here. to kind of, we're trying to make this merge a little bit less, so it's a little bit of a sharper angle there. I'm going to add a control loop. I'm going to put it right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select every other face, go all the way around. And then I'm going to press E and click, and then I'm going to scale out. Let's see if I... There we go. Scale that a little bit, not too much, just a little bit, and then I'm going to add control loops and drag them to the edges here to flatten that out. And I'm going to hide our modifier to make this a little bit easier. The good thing about working with the modifier, even if you don't want to use it, is it requires a clean mesh. So, in other words, your mesh is going to flow one way or the other. And that's good for, you know, animating, things of that nature. So this is what it looks like without our subdivision. If I smooth this out, you can see you get some weird shadows, but you can edit that by coming down to this green triangle and go to normals, and you can add the auto smooth angle, and that'll keep it from trying to smooth out these 90-degree angles. But for us, we just turn on our modifier so you can see it again. And then add a control loop here, one right here, and one right here. So I'm happy with that. Okay, I'm okay with that. So now what I'm going to start with is a cube. And then we're going to make almost an airfoil shape. So I add with a control loop right there in the center. We'll take this front face, we'll drag it forward a little bit, and we're going to scale it down along the z-axis. Now I'll do the same with the back here. Pretty much the same length. Make it look very similar if you can. And then we're going to add subdivision once again. And we'll add some control loops here, scale it up a little bit, get that round shape. That's the shape I'm looking for. So we'll press 7. Now this right here, this part coming into it, is this bar right here, which is almost a V shape. And that's supposed to come in right at the top of this. So there's a way we can go about this. We'll select these faces right here, just like that. We'll extrude it down. I'm going to scale along the z-axis by pressing S, then Z. And then on the numpad, we're going to press 0. And that's going to flatten that out. We'll have to drag it down a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to select all the faces on the front, and I'm going to press I. And not enough to make it overlap here in the corner, but we're going to do that. We're just going to extrude it back, scale it down, and we'll extrude it again. And then I'm going to press I once. Nope. Take it back. We'll just add a control loop here and drag it towards back. Okay, so now we got this triangle shape for this to fit into. So I'm going to isolate both of these for a moment. Press 3 and then press 9 to flip it around. We're going to scale this as best we can to fit in here. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to extrude one side. We'll extrude it out just about there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two loops on the left side. I'm going to press H. And that'll hide those for the moment. I'm just going to manipulate what I have. See, I got to press 9 to flip it around. Now I'm going to manipulate this to fit within the area that I need it to. So I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. That's really all we're doing. Scale this down. Now I'll select all this and drag it in. And then when in your edit mode, you're going to go Alt-H, and that'll unhide all your vertices. There we go. We'll press 7, backslash, so we get everything back. Then I'm going to select these. We'll go with, see, I'll add a loop cut right down the middle here. We'll select the bottom half of the faces on this side right here. And we're going to take those and we're just going to extrude them out, drag it back. And we'll do the same with the back portion right here. We'll extrude it out and then drag it up to where we want it to actually go. So now we can start by enlarging this because we want it bigger. So we'll just scale it out to roughly the length we're looking for. I want this to be bigger as well. Alright, and we're going to add a loop cut here, drag it up so it's following the line we want. And then we'll go here, scale this up as well. And then I grab this right here and actually bring this out. I'm going to sharpen this angle right here just a little bit. Take this, extrude it, scale it in, extrude it into the car. Do the same with this, extrude it, scale it in, extrude it again into the car. And then I'm just going to add control loops to sharpen the areas that I want to be a little bit sharper. For example, this angle right here, I don't want it merging like that. Just like that. We have our shape, and then if we smooth this out, it doesn't look bad, but I don't like it all that much. So I'm going to drag this down, actually. I'm going to go away from the blueprint for a quick moment and do some editing. Drag this down. Drag that down. We'll take this, drag it up. Actually, you don't have to do this part if you like the way it looked before. Just want to have a little bit of a different flavor, if you will. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker. Make sure it still fits in there. Looks like it does. Drag it forward a little. Cool. And then I'm going to angle this up because these are actually angled a little bit. So put a little bit of angle to it. Looks good. So now we're going to go back to a image. Let me see if I can find a better picture than that. Well, it's okay. If we don't find an image, we'll just go off the blueprint that we have here. So this portion that comes out of the wheel hub actually should shrink down at the center. We can see that here. So we'll just scale these in right here. I'll drag this up. Drag this back. Drag this back. Add a couple control loops. not looking too bad. Let's see if I can... Oh, here we go. I had some pictures here hidden. So, okay. We have our V-bar at the bottom on this car. That's okay. And what we're looking for is we got this rod right here. And this looks like V-bar as well, so we'll put one at the bottom, too. So let's copy and paste a little bit. And then I'm going to take our drivetrain, if you will, whatever you want to call it, drag it up a little bit. And delete that. Alright, I'm going to do a little bit of editing. So, our V here, I'm actually going to take to the bottom. To fix this, I'll just rotate this along the x-axis 180 degrees. So we got that little gap on the bottom. And then I'll just rearrange this. Drag it up like that. Drag this down to where it needs to be, which is right there. Then I'm going to bring this down. Alright, we're gonna add another wing shape. So same thing we did before, we'll add our modifier. Extrude this out here and down. Extrude this out and down. And that's just gonna go from the top and straight out. So I'll just do this. Take this, extrude it up. And we'll smooth it out. And I'll take this and scale it down. Shrink it so it fits. Alrighty, good with that. Then we're gonna add just a cylinder now. Rotate that 90 degrees. Oh, didn't mean to scale it like that. So we're just gonna extrude the ends here, scale them down, and then extrude it out. Scale it down, extrude it out. So we end up with this shape here. And then smooth this out. Press 7, and then this will be in the front actually. If we double tap Z, we can scale it because we rotated it, so scale that out. And to anyone who doesn't know anything about cars, this is just going to look like a mess of parts. So you don't have to be super detail orientated depending who you're selling it to, or if you're just doing it for fun. So that's also something good to bear in mind when doing stuff like this. Alright, so now that we got that done, what we can do is we can take that assembly. So I just press C, highlighted the wheel and all, everything attached. We're going to copy it, paste it, Control C and Control V, and we're going to drag it back to the rear wheel position. Now, of course, these are not going to match perfectly. Looks like I accidentally copied this, so we'll delete that. So this is where we got to do a little bit of adjusting. So we're just gonna move everything around to make it look the way we want. Take this and actually make an angle like this, make it a little bit shorter. And the upper one, we're gonna make it almost go straight. And then I gotta rotate that a little bit. And then I can take this and drag it down. Get that to about where I want it. I'm gonna bring that in. And then we're gonna press S, double tap Z, and make this a little bit shorter. Made it a little bit too short. And we got our portion that connects to the wheel, so we're gonna make that come forward as well. Okay, so now that we have the wheel assemblies, this actually needs to come down. So I'm gonna fix that real quick and bring this a little bit lower. I'll drag this back just a little bit. Alright, now we can mirror that over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all this one assembly because I'm not animating this. But if you are animating, just be careful with what you combine. You may want the wheels separated, you may want each individual suspension component separated. Kind of depends. So I'm going to make the wheels all one piece. Something to be careful of is, depending what modifiers you have on these, it can cause a problem as well. So if you have a mirror modifier on one part and not on all of them, that's going to whack things up. So make sure you have those applied. For me, all these have the subdivision. And for the wheel components, let's see, nope, I did mess up here. This is a perfect example. So you see there's a gap between these two because now it's going off of a different origin point. So I'm not going to combine these. Perfect example. I'm going to apply all the mirror modifiers here. Oh, applied the wrong one. There we go. We'll do the same on the back. Nope. Mirror. There we go. Mirror. Cool. Now we can combine them all together. And I'm doing Control J to combine them together. You just select them all. Control J. Easy peasy. And then we add a mirror modifier, and we select the car. And that'll mirror it around the car origin. If your car origin is not in the center, you want to put it to something where the origin is in the center, because that's where you want it mirrored off of. We'll mirror this as well. Alrighty, cool. Now that we have that done, it's time to just make the cutout for the cockpit and the intake, and then we're done with the basic car. And the rest is just simple details and things like that. That's personal preference, or depending what car you're making, it's going to vary drastically. So we're going to highlight our front of the intake here. I'm going to press I, insert it a little bit, drag it back just a little. and then I'm going to extrude it by pressing E. Scale that in just a little. You can bring it back as far as you want, make multiple extrusions, depending how far back you want the intake to go. For me, this is fine because the render's never going to go back that far. So then you press I, do a few insets to kind of sharpen that a little bit if you want. Now for the cockpit portion, press 7. It comes from the very back of the intake, right here, all the way up to here. Right up here, actually. So we need to make this curve. So what we can do is we just select these points, and we double tap G. Oh, that's not gonna work. We'll select the front one, double tap G. Then you can drag it forward. And we can do that individually for these if we want it to flow together. And then, when you have the shape, I'm just gonna go with this. We'll select all the faces that you want to end up being the cockpit. We're gonna press I. We're just gonna insert it a little bit. And then we'll extrude it down by pressing E. And then we're going to scale it along the Z-axis to make it flat at the bottom. And there you go. You have your bucket, if you want to call that. I'm going to press I again to flatten out the bottom of that. Alright, so after recording the video, I realized I forgot to show you guys how to insert the intakes portions here. So this is pretty straightforward. We're going to select the faces we want to turn into the intake. For me, on this one, it's these three. We'll press I. Insert them a little bit. I'm going to drag that back just a little. And then I'm going to press I once more. And then just scale it in just a little. And I'm going to extrude it back. And then that's about as far as I want to go with mine. You can do the work to extrude it all the way back. But that's about all there is to it. Let's say you want to sharpen this out, because I definitely do. You'll have to add a control loop and just kind of drag it up there. Sharpen that. And then I'm going to sharpen this as well. Do that. I'm actually going to delete that one.